I'm going to walk you through how I've put together my page for the BMI practice task. We're looking at the Personal Exercise Pal SAC, and it's asking us to create a body mass index calculator. So BMI takes the person's height and weight and gives us a calculation of the healthiness of their weight. It's of course only one measure of a healthy body. If you do a web search of BMI calculators, you find there's a whole range of different ones already created. That's fine, and most of them are similar. They provide some gender, being able to change between imperial and metric units, enter in your height and your weight, it calculates it, gives you some indication of where you are on this scale of too underweight and obviously too overweight. It's a really interesting activity because it asks us to do lots of bits and pieces that we need to in our programming. We're using PHP obviously, and our starting point is this HTML page. If we have a look at what our page HTML looks like, okay, we've got a very simple structure inside our body, our H1. We've got a container. We've got a form on the left-hand side of the screen that has a radio button to change between units. It has the ability to enter the height and the weight and then submit that. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have a place where our results are displayed. We've got some work to do here in PHP. These sections here we need to fix up. And then one of the things that we will need to do is actually save this information into a CSV data file. There's a little bit of JavaScript here. This is not a JavaScript course, so that's why I'm giving this to you. The CSS, it's fairly straightforward. I'm using flex sizing, and I'm also using these CSS styles to do our coloring for our feedback. So the first thing I want to do is actually connect up our form so we can do some calculations. A thing to remember when you're creating forms is that anything that you want to be submitted by the form needs to have a name. When using radio buttons in a form, you can give each button the same name, and only the button which is currently checked is submitted with the form. So let's see what happens when we type some data in here. So let's say we're going to be 1 meter, 80 tall, and we've got a weight of 75 kilograms. So nothing's going to happen because I haven't programmed it, of course. Let's make sure that we're looking at the right screen. Okay, so 1 meter, 80 and 75 kilograms. And when I click on that, I get this submitted up here. So this is the data that was collected in the form. We've got units at metric, so that's selected there. We've got height 1, which is the meters part, height 2, which is the centimeters part, and the weight, which is here. So if we change to imperial, we've got that little bit of JavaScript I was talking about, actually just changing the labels here. So we enter in that we're 5'10" and weighing 175 pounds. Calculate that. You can see our units are now imperial. Our height is 5. Our 5 feet 10. So there's 2 height fields, and our weight is 175. So this is what the HTML form. I haven't done any PHP programming yet. This is all HTML. This is what a form gives us. It's a key value pair set. So the first thing we want to do in PHP, inside the head section, is where I'm going to put all of my processing, create a PHP tag, not an OHO one, but a PHP one. And I'm going to check and see if inside the get array there is a key called submit. We come back over here. Here it is here. This is actually the name of this button. And this is our trigger to say that the button was clicked and therefore the form was submitted. When we come to this point here, straight into the page, the button is not clicked. Again, I enter some data in and click the button. Now I have this. So let's just start by showing that worked. So I'm just going to dump out into the screen that the button was clicked. So if I go back here, the button was clicked, message didn't come. If I type in some data, go on, calculate BMI, now we've got this message, the button was clicked. Okay, and this is all being driven by here. Now we can actually cheat. If we type in here submit, button was clicked, there it is. So this is one of the reasons why in a production environment you're much more likely to use the post method rather than the get method. But when you're developing a new page, often it's a good idea to start with get, because you can see in the URL what data is being collected. So let's go back to collecting our 1 meter 80 at 75 kilos in metric. Okay. Now what are we going to do with that information? Well, we want to calculate the BMI. So let's just get that part working. We're going to create a variable called BMI, and the formula for BMI is the weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters, and all of that is squared. Alright, so obviously there's a few different ways of doing that. We're going to do a very simple way. So the weight that the user entered is also sitting in this get array. Let's have a look at it. So we can use the print R function to actually see what is in an array. Let's see what happens. Oh, cannot use that. Okay, let's get rid of that. There we go. So our array has got units, a key called units, has a value metric, a key called height 1, which is a value 1, a key called height 2, which is a value 80, a key called weight, which is a value 75, and a key called submit, which is a value of nothing. And that is the same as what's happening up here. So in order to get to the weight variable, we'll ask it to give us, look for that key, and it will return back the weight. And we're going to divide that by the height times height. Now, we're going to create ourselves a little pre-tag here. And this will allow us to actually look at our data in a more convenient way. So let's start by, we'll just take this out of here and pop it in there. Oops. Of course, we need to put a PHP tag in here as well. Alright. And let's also output BMI variable. Now, I have to do a little bit of fiddling here. Oh, and I have to do a bit of fiddling because I've only declared the BMI inside this if statement. So as soon as this if statement closes, this BMI variable no longer exists. So if I want to use it outside here, I need to actually declare it outside here. So now I'm going to want to use that variable further down the page, as I'm doing right here. So let's have a look at what that gives us. Oh, gave us an error. Well, let me fix that. Undefined index height. Oh, because we've got height 1 and height 2. Okay. So let's create a quick little variable here. So I've got to take the meters and I've got to add to it so height 1 and height 2 divided by 100. And in here I've got my new height variable times itself. Alright, let's see if I fix my errors here. Because of course these are called height 1 and height 2. Oh, look at that. So you can see when we put it inside a pre-tag, that's short for pre-formatted, we get this nice little setup, and we can actually see the associative array that is set up. And we've got our BMI. Let's go and see if it matches. So if we log on to the Heart Foundation, on metric, we had 180 centimeters and 75 kilos, and the BMI, 75. Oh, what's it doing? 180 centimeters, 75 kilos. Gives me a BMI of 23.1, 23.148. Okay, so we're confident, well, we'll still have to do a lot more testing, but we're confident that we're on the right track. The problem is that we actually have, well, we can put this down here, can't we? I'll come back to that. We've got this calculation happening inside the display page. And what we actually want to do is get rid of all of these calculations, all of the logic of our program. We want to get it out of the displaying page. This is called separation of concerns.